Is this Sony FS5 Mark I worth getting in 2020? And if you own a Sony A7 camera, is this worth upgrading to? Well, it depends. It depends on what you're going to use this camera for. With the Sony FS5, this camera pretty much can do it all. So as a working man's camera, this camera is amazing. If you're looking to make money by doing videography, by doing corporate events, going to event shoots, or if you're planning on shooting even like short movies or music videos, you can do with this camera because it has so many options available to it. This camera was pretty much made to make your life easier. This camera has built-in ND filters, and Sony has the best ND filters in the business. So you have that in the camera. You have two XLR ports in the camera, and as you can see, I usually just put a shotgun mic on here, which this shotgun mic itself is very versatile because you can either keep it on your camera, you can put it on a boom stand. So if you're doing an interview, you can just keep it on there and you can get amazing audio that way, and you can also just handhold it and just interview people with it. So this is extremely versatile, and you just plug that right in here on the side, and on the back you get another XLR port, which I just plug in my lavalier mic onto it. So you get two different inputs that you can use to get professional grade audio right onto the camera, and you don't have to worry about using external recorders to get your audio. And if you want even better video quality out of this camera, because this camera can only do 10-bit 1080p, if you want to do 10-bit 4K, you have to use an external recorder like the Ninja Inferno or the Odyssey 7Q. And you also have to buy the RAW upgrade. Now if you get Mark II, it already has a RAW upgrade, so you don't have to buy it. Now you might be asking yourself if I should buy the Mark I version of this camera if you're interested, or if you should get the Mark II. And the real only difference between the Mark I and Mark II is that if you use the default picture profile, which 99% of the time you're probably not going to use, you're probably going to be shooting either S-Log or Cineform. Then if you do shoot the default picture profile, then you do get the better color science with the Sony Venice colors. But that's only if you shoot the default colors. If you shoot S-Log or Cineform, you still get the same old color. But what you can do is you can just use a lot, like I use the Alice Chapman's lot that actually converts S-Log to the Sony Venice colors. So that should not be a determining factor if you're getting Mark I or Mark II. So I would personally just choose between which better deal you can get. Like I got this camera used on Amazon for $2,300. Now if you want to buy a new Sony FS5, you have to buy Mark II, which is $5,000. And I didn't really care about the high frame rates upgrade or the RAW upgrade, at least for now. In the future I might get it, but that's always an option. You don't have to buy it right now. So I would say which one is a better deal for you that you can find, just get that, because you can always just upgrade to the RAW upgrade or the high frame rate upgrade. But in 2020 there's other camera options that you can get, like you can get a Canon C200, or you can get the Blackmagic Pocket camera. But personally I'm not a huge fan of the Blackmagic Pocket camera. Not because of the quality, because the Blackmagic Pocket camera has one of the best qualities ever on like consumer level camera that you can get, but just the form factor and the fact that it's lacking internal ND filters, which are, once you like start using them, you really appreciate internal ND filters. Because if you're like using the circular ND filters, it's a pain in the ass to put on your lens, and you have to have specific ones for each lens, and if you go too far with the ND filter, you'll start getting vignetting, and you don't have to worry about any of those if you just have the internal ND filters built into your camera. Also, this camera just feels better in the hand, and of course you can just rig out your Blackmagic camera, so you don't really have to worry about that. But I just like the form factor, and you get pro level audio on this camera that is kind of lacking on the Blackmagic camera. So personally I prefer this camera over the Blackmagic camera, but if the video quality is your #1 priority, then I would go with the Blackmagic Pocket camera. But this camera does good enough video, and if you want even better, you can always get the RAW upgrade for it. You can get 4K 12-bit footage out of this camera. But normally the 1080p 10-bit footage out of this camera is good enough for my work. If you're doing corporate work or doing any weddings or anything, the 1080p out of this camera will be more than good enough. But compared to the A7 cameras, this camera pretty much has the same exact video quality, I would say. If you shoot 4K on the A7 cameras, it's pretty much the same as the 4K out of this camera. Now if you shoot 1080p though, the 1080p on the A7 cameras, I would say is pretty much unusable. There's no reason to really shoot it unless if you really don't care about the quality. But the 1080p out of this camera is beautiful. That's what I mainly shoot with. Also with this camera, you know, you have a tilty screen, which is really useful because if you're shooting down, you can aim it up, and if you're in front of the camera, then you can just aim it towards yourself. And if you're shoulder rigging this camera, then you can just put it up here and then just aim it down, and you can move it all around. You can even take it off. And the ergonomics of this camera is just great. Like I'm holding right here, the hand grip on this camera is just super comfortable. You can just hold the whole camera with it, and you can just rest the bottom of your hand on the lens. I also have a rail system under here that even makes it more comfortable just to hold this camera, and you can just control everything through this grip. So it's just super useful. And the thing about this camera is that this camera is not amazing at one thing, it's just really good at a lot of things. So this camera is not really like a specialized camera. Like, you know, if you're gonna shoot a movie or something, you're probably not gonna pick up this camera. You're gonna pick up a, you know, an Alexa camera or a Red camera to do that stuff. But if you just want like an overall good camera, that will pay itself off. You know, if you get one good client, one good like corporate client or a wedding, you can pretty much pay this camera off with one shoot. And this camera will just help you earn money. So I think this is a great camera to buy even in 2020, because even though this is mainly a 1080p camera, you still don't really need to shoot 4K that much anymore. Mainly because most people watch content on their phone. So a lot of companies are even just wants content for social media. So if you're gonna upload on like Instagram or Facebook, you don't need 4K footage. And even so, if you do want to shoot 4K, you can shoot 4K with this camera also. And it just looks great as long as you light it well and you know how to use this camera. You can get some great quality out of this camera. Also, if you're just thinking about getting this camera to do YouTube videos, it pretty much works except for the autofocus. This camera uses, unfortunately, contrast-based autofocus. So the autofocus on this camera I would never use. I actually tried shooting this video before with the autofocus on, and it completely ruined the video. If you ever use like a Panasonic GH5 or any of those Panasonic cameras that use contrast-based autofocus, you know that, you know, you get that wobbly effect, and the same thing happens with this camera. This camera unfortunately doesn't have the amazing autofocus that A7 cameras have. I know with the FX9 cameras, those cameras do have the autofocus that this camera has, but that's like an $11,000 camera, while this camera you can pick up around $2,000 to $3,000. So I think if you can get this camera for around that price, it's definitely worth it for your business. But anyways guys, thanks for watching this video. If it helped, make sure to like the video, and if you have any questions, just write it down in the comments and I'll try to help you. Anyways guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.